Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another segment of A Journey, the Meeting of the Mind. We are so happy to have you joining us tonight. We are going to be talking tonight about eliminating a poverty mentality stronghold. And before I get into exactly what that is, let me introduce you to my panelists tonight. We are all in the house tonight. My ladies are all here, and I couldn't be more excited. Joining us tonight is the CEO and founder of Execute Your Destiny, Miss Elena Jimenez.
Hi, everybody.
Next to her is Miss Jennifer Foxworthy, owner and CEO of Inspirationally Speaking. Whoop, whoop. Also, we have our very special sister in the house, Miss Jennifer Washington. We're so glad to have her back with us tonight as well.
Hello, thank you.
And of course, like I've already said, I'm Kimberly Collins, the Educated Natural, CEO and founder of 10 Marketing LLC. So glad to be with you tonight. Well, ladies, let's jump right into this. We have a lot of information, and let's not waste time. We're going to get right into it. First of all, a lot of you out there may be wondering, what exactly is poverty mentality? I did some research on this, and what I come to find out is that poverty mentality basically means it boils down to the way a person thinks about what they don't have versus what they do have. For example, how many of you out there have probably made these statements? You probably said, I can't afford, and then you fill in the blank with the thing that you can't afford, right? Or there may be some of you out there that may be saying, you know what? I'm in my 30s now. I didn't finish high school when I should have, and I am just too old. Or maybe I'm not smart enough to go back to school and get my high school diploma. Or there may be some of you out there that may say, you know what, I already have my high school diploma, but you're trying to get me at my age to go back to college. I just don't have time to go back to school right now. Well, those of you that may be still working in corporate America, you're probably saying, you know what, there's a position that's opening up at my job, and it's typically filled by a male counterpart, so I'm not even going to apply for the position because, after all, I'm a woman. It's a man's job. I'm just not going to do it. Well, you're probably, some of you maybe just like me, like I was maybe a year ago when I used to make this statement. I used to say, you know what? I can never own my own business. Why? Because I've always worked for someone else, so I'm not even going to put forth the effort and try to own something of my own. Now, let me tell you, all of those statements I just made fall into the category of a person that has a poverty mentality. You are too busy concentrating on the things that you don't have versus the things that you do have. This line of thinking falls directly into the sheer meaning of what it means to have a poverty mentality. Basically, it boils down to your attitude about you and your own preconceived limitations. I was reading recently some quotes, and the quote by Richard Bach really stuck to me when I thought about poverty mentality. He says, when you argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. Basically meaning whatever you sit there and put upon yourself can be categorized as a limitation, you are right. You are right. You're not going to excel past that limitation because you yourself have put that upon yourself. So here's my advice to you. Don't allow this type of mentality to further impact you. The poverty mindset leads to self-destruction, so avoid it at any cost. Let it be known that the only people that avoid this type of feeling are the ones that are capable of finding value in what they have. So whatever you have, if you only have $5, find value in that $5. Don't compare yourself to somebody that may have $10. Accept and celebrate what you already have. Now, when I was doing my research on poverty mentality, I was curious as to where this particular term, derived from. In my research, I found out that a man named Zig Ziglar, who is one of the world's most renowned motivational speakers, he is the one that actually coined this particular phrase. According to Zig, He regularly spoke about how people spend a majority of their time discussing what's missing in their lives rather than celebrating and acknowledging the things that they already have present in their lives or the things that are already in place in their lives. I further did some more research, and I ran across a website entitled at www.wisegeek.com. And on that website, they actually broke down the fact that Zig Ziglar and others like him share that those who break out of poverty and really succeed are those who make a conscious choice to do so. They believe in themselves, they have a plan, and they are just sheerly determined, and they persevere to the very end to achieve the things in life that they want. And I found that to be completely profound, because a lot of people nowadays don't even realize how their words actually impact their environment. So when you sit there and you say these words, these sentences that start with the words I can't or I don't, you pretty much have put yourself like 5 steps back behind your peers versus 10 steps towards your goal. So here is what I want to do now. I want to pass it over to Elena, and Elena is going to explain to you, as well as the rest of us, why this type of mentality takes place in the first place. Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kimberly. So we've all heard the term that we're a product of our environment. And so as children, especially for those of us who were born into poverty, typically you're exposed right off the bat to a sense of lack, because your parents are typically struggling to make ends meet. And it's not just your parents. If you live in poverty, then all those around you are coming from the same type of mentality. And you, by way of just coming into the world, wind up exposed to what it is to be in a place of lack. I follow a doctor by the name of Dr. Bruce Lipton, and I really enjoy his work because he teaches us that there are basically 2 minds. You have the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind is the mind that is present and is able to make decisions at every particular point during your life. However, when we are first born, our conscious mind is not active. What is active is the subconscious mind, and so which is the second of the 2. And he teaches us that during the first 7 years of life, children are absorbing, and we've all heard it, children are like sponges. They absorb everything, and they're learning from their environment. Mm-hmm. And typically they learn most things through their caretakers, through their parents, their grandparents, whoever they're exposed to, whoever they're around. And during that time, as they're picking up, they're learning what this world looks like, how it works, how to function in this lifetime. And it isn't until they're about age 7 that their conscious mind develops, and they're then able to start making some choices for themselves. But at this point, from the time of birth up until the time that they're usually about 6 or 7 years old, what they're absorbing is the mindset of those that are around them, hence their parents. So if you're born into a poverty lifestyle and your parents are struggling to make ends meet, and they're struggling to go to work every day and aren't necessarily maybe spending that time or exposing their children to some of the experiences that they need to in order to help them fully develop and gain a very well-rounded perspective, then they're absorbing their parents' mindset, their parents' habits, their parents' decision-making. And we talked about this a little bit during one of our past hangouts about domestic violence. Children are absorbing everything, the good, bad, and the ugly during that time. And by the time they're about 7 years old, now they start to make choices for themselves. Their conscious mind starts to develop. And what they use is that database, that download programming that is basically their subconscious mind to start making decisions, because that's all that they have. That's all that they have available to them. And so that's one of the main reasons why, for those of us who may experience issues or struggle with that sense of lack, it's because 9 times out of 10 they've been exposed to that throughout their childhood. And as you mentioned, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. You can change it. It's all about your attitude. We've all experienced perhaps some negativity or negative mindsets, but you can change that. But during that time set, that is when, and I'm sure you've all heard self-limiting beliefs. That's when those self-limiting beliefs are developed. I know for myself, my mom is in her later 60s, and you know, she was born during the Depression, and it's interesting because when you think about that era, the Depression, that sounds depressing, and that was a total time of lack. And I recall being able to identify in my own mom's behavior how, you know, everything is with a closed fist. It's all about saving money and trying to survive. And so that was the mindset that she came from. And, you know, I've talked about this in the past. I have 6 siblings, and I'm one of the youngest. So things, you know, I rarely got anything new. Things were passed down from the oldest to the youngest. And so it's really important that we expose our children to higher education at a young age, start teaching our children and speaking to them as if they are adults and expecting that they're going to understand these things. Talk to them about money, talk to them about their potential, tell them how smart they are, build up their confidence, build up their self-esteem, and, you know, watch that negative behavior, those negative attitudes that we're exposing them to, because they're like a little data bank, and they're taking it all in, and then that's the mindset that they're going to start operating from when they start to go to school, and they're about 7, you know, and they start to exercise their own personalities and their own creative mind, and they start to execute their own choices for their own behalf. And so that's primarily one of the biggest reasons why this happens to us, is because we've been exposed to that mindset early on in our childhoods.
Outstanding.
I said, great point, great point. And that leads us actually right into our next topic, you know, but the thing that I really wanted to talk about. And I believe that another reason why the poverty mentality takes place, I mean, it's also known, those of you out there, it's also known as the poverty mentality is also known as poverty mindset. Because when I was doing my research, both terms kept popping up, so I was like, okay, let me let people know it's either or. That both terms mean the same thing. When I kept making the negative statements that I spoke of earlier, fear played a huge part behind the reasoning why I kept saying the things that I couldn't do. I was afraid. And it wasn't until I became older when I said, you know what, maybe if I change the way I look at situations, this fear will subside. So what I started doing was doing a lot more reading, a lot more positive, you know, talking to myself, you know, encouraging myself, as the song says. And what began to happen was my mentality started to change. I started thinking that everything that was out there wasn't designed for me. I started saying, you know what, Kim, if that person can do it, you can do it. It's still there for you. So I was able to, over years and over self-thinking and you know, talking to myself and building my own self up, I was able to conquer, you know, the poverty mentality. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, and Jennifer Washington will talk about this right after I finish this, I think that's why a lot of us as adults pour that into our children because of fear. We're afraid that because we didn't do it, we'll tell our children, well, you know, you shouldn't do that. I've met a man that actually, my daughter loves swimming. She wants to, you know, do swimming things. And I've had him say, oh, no, she shouldn't swim. And I said, why? And he put a race thing on it. You know, black people don't swim. And I'm looking at this man like, did he really just let that come out of his mouth? You're pouring that negativity, that poverty mindset onto my child. If she wants to swim, let her swim. You know, and I think, you know, that as an adult, we have to reel our fears back in and stop casting that upon the next generation. Yes. Because if you don't, it'll just, the cycle will continue. You know, and a lot of people, and I hate to use this term, but it is what it is. A lot of people are just ignorant. They just give off this ignorance instead of saying, you know what, We can do all things if we set our minds to it. But instead of us going out there and taking the risk and taking the chance and changing in a lot of cases, you know, the way that we think, we just sit there and try to stop everybody else from excelling. So I'm glad you brought that up. We really have to stop pouring this thing on our next generation. So Jennifer Washington, that leads me to you about the generational impact that the poverty mentality has.
Yes, really good points, and I know that so many people can relate to it. I know we've brought culture and even racial background into this discussion, which is, I believe, very relevant because each culture brings their own story. You know, everybody, stories are handed down generationally, and if you've heard that the previous generation struggled, and although they may want the best for that newer generation, they will subconsciously and unintentionally pass on what you're saying, Kimberly, the fear. And I believe that that's the word that should be the takeaway, is that fear is what's being programmed. Mm-hmm. And generally, you know, generations of fear being handed down, that the rug will be pulled from under us. And if you're an immigrant family, you know, you come here with one bag, or maybe, like I think Jen said, the clothes on your back. I mean, that's a fear-based thing, that everything you've attained, you know, you may lose it. You know, right. So I wanted to talk about just my experience in growing up in an inner city, big city like Philadelphia here. I have a certain, I mean, we have, like, in my family, many socioeconomic levels. You know, I have wealthy to poor in my family and middle class. Mm-hmm. And that's probably something you all can relate to as well. In family systems, you won't have, like, everybody is not poor. You may have the rich cousin or the rich aunt, or, you know, spinster aunt or something like that. But I have cousins that have a poverty mindset that has been generational. Like, they may expect to be on food stamps, for instance, or as they call it, public assistance or anything like that. I'm not trying to throw any kind of political, you know, discussion into this, but it's just what it is. If they get food stamps, and maybe they don't need them, they're not in dire poverty, but they've heard that this is how you beat the system, per se. And then they hand this thinking down to the children. And then what happens is it's an expected thing. It's an entitlement kind of thing that I've seen. I'm not saying that's the case in all scenarios, but then, you know, they kind of feel like, well, you know, they owe it to us, the system, whatever that is, the man. And they take the assistance and maybe don't need it. You know, they're well, you know, able-bodied and very brilliant-minded people, that if they just put that energy into maybe building a business for themselves or something, you know what I'm saying? That they would not need to go that route. And what I want to also stress, that when people do buy into this self-limiting, as Elena said, thinking, what it does is it stifles that creativity. It actually cuts off that drive, that tenacity to have and attain more in life. And I'm not just saying from a materialistic standpoint, but just, you may want to go and achieve something in the academic realm. But because you believe that you can't do so many things, then that's one more thing you'll tell yourself you can't do. And I also come from a Judeo-Christian background, which it says in the Bible that as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. And I know a lot of belief systems do borrow from that particular truth, you know, and believe that everything does begin in the thoughts. So if thinking is, you know, programmed, and that's, you know, what I want to stick with, that generational thing, that programmed thinking. I'm starting to wonder if it's then embedded into our DNA, if it goes so many generations. I wonder if those stories do get embedded somehow, and that's why it's hard to shake them. But I do ponder these things a lot, and I just wanted to share something that, you know, I mentioned to you all, that I had gone to Africa last year, and some of my African friends, not all of them, you know, we became very, you know, close during the trip or whatever. Like we felt like family, you know, so connected. And then, you know, they're engaged in social media, so I keep in touch with them. Well, a couple of them came to me in private and that, you know, just started demanding money from me. Like, you know, it's just that way for me. Like, you know, help me finish school and help me this and help me have a business here in Africa. And, you know, I'm thinking, wow, won't you help me? You know, I mean, because, hey, I mean, it's like they think automatically that Americans have the ability to do so much more than maybe they could, you know, at the time. And yes, we were very blessed in this nation. We do give a lot to other nations, but I'll tell you what, I came away with the sadness from these experiences, and I told my friends this. I said, you come from a continent, you come from countries that are so wealthy in resources. I don't know why this thinking that the Americans are the saviors, you know, to the world. We come over and just, you know, give gifts and just, you know, you need us. I said, I don't want you to think that you need us, you know, that you need me to achieve your dreams over in across the sea, you know, so far. I believe God gave each country, you know, resources that everybody could make their way in life and be abundant. You know what I'm saying? So it is, it's in the thinking, and it just kind of threw me for a while, because I said, you know, I wanted to go over to Africa and do this medical mission, but I didn't want to go as a savior to Africa. I don't look at Africa being impoverished, you know? So that's something that I just wanted to raise, that also that issue, that I personally think that maybe that's been programmed into maybe many Africans' mindsets, that, you know, when you see the commercials of the big-bellied kids that are hungry, you know, you get this perception that's so wrong about Africa, you know, and I just hope they don't buy into it, as well as people anywhere in the world, you know. And that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, that I believe, again, as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, so they are.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Good job.
I agree. I totally agree with you, Jennifer, because just thinking back to growing up, you know, in the setting that I grew up, you know, and thinking about, you know, Africa, when we see these things on TV, a lot of people in their minds immediately say, oh, it's full of a bunch of poor people. And it's like they eliminate the fact that Africa, like you said, is a rich country. I mean, they have so many things that come from there that we here in the United States, you know, are like, wow, the diamonds and all of these great things that come out of Africa. And it's that type of, okay, a continent, the continent of Africa, and and yes, I have some smart people in my house, and, and when we see that here in the States, if you look at the negative images that they show, if you didn't have the right mindset or mentality, that would kind of bleed over into your mind, thinking that it is what it is that you see on TV. But once you go there, you know, I've met several people that have toured there and said it's one of the most beautiful places. You know, the people are just, you know, wonderful. And it's just like here, if you go to the wrong side of town here, I mean, just right outside the White House, you take a wrong turn, you run right into poverty. And that's the nation's capital. So you sometimes, you know, we have to think, you know, about not allowing the things that we see to really impact our mentality. You know, and for some reason, I can't get that man saying to my daughter about the whole swimming thing out of my mind, because I'm like, all right, you know, maybe you can't swim. Maybe that's how you grew up. You didn't learn that skill set. But what, you know, who gives you the audacity to try to pour that on another person that just because they're of the same race as you. And we have to be careful of doing that. You know, we don't want to pour our own fears onto someone else. I met another lady at another incident where she had this serious jealousy thing going on. And jealousy plays a huge part into the poverty mentality, because if you're jealous of what someone else has, like, you know, Jennifer, I'm sure can attest to this, being prior military. When you look around the military community, you'll see one couple driving a BMW. You may see somebody driving a Hugo, you know, and if that person that's driving the Hugo is jealous of the person that's driving the BMW, they're actually just, you know, limiting themselves, not realizing, okay, you have the same job as they have. You can go out, save your money, invest your money, do whatever you need to if you want that BMW. Don't just sit there and say, well, you know, because of my rank, I can't go out and afford this, or I can't, because when you do that, you won't. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think that's another thing a lot of us need to be aware of. Your jealousy also plays into how your mind works. A lot of people sometimes focus on money when they hear the term poverty, you know, mentality. You know, they think about money when they hear just the word poverty. And sometimes it's not even about money, but if your issue is money, you have to check your attitude about money. Jennifer and I, you know, were in a company where they always talked about money. And, you know, I've heard one of the speakers always say, you know, what is your attitude? What is your mentality when it comes to money? If everything you do is based on money, then you'll always be chasing it, because money is just an idea. It's a concept. So you'll always be running behind it. So what we're basically telling you all tonight is, when it comes to the poverty mentality, you really have to look within yourself and start celebrating what you have versus concentrating on what you don't have. Because all it does is it boils down and it keeps you bound by your own limitations that you set upon yourself. Ms. Foxworthy, what you have to say to us?
Poverty mentality. I know that I grew up in the projects. Actually, up until high school, I had 6 different. My mom and I, when she separated and divorced my dad, I was in 6 different locations. So I never had a stable home for more than 4 years. Life as a single mom is tough. You get behind bills, things escalate, and you end up having to move for one reason or another. And I remember coming home and finding a pink slip on the front door. And I'm like, Mom, what is this about? And so basically, we had less than 24 hours to get all of our belongings. We had to put them on the back porch, and we had to walk the streets looking for rent signs in the window. So by the grace of God, we happened to come across an apartment that was willing to work with my mom with the deposit and able to move in right then and there. It wasn't the best place to live or area, but it provided a roof over our heads. When we got back to the place that we needed to move out of, our belongings that were on the back porch have been gone through, stolen, you know, so a lot of memories, pictures, that type of thing. And to a young person like myself at the time, that was devastating, you know, because it was pictures of my friends or things that I held dear. So I understand as far as living in the projects, not having or living in lack, but by my parents, to their credibility, I always had a roof over my head. I had food in my stomach. I had clothes on my back. Like Elena said, they might have been hand-me-downs, but I didn't know that I lived in lack. My parents took care of that. All I had to do was play and make sure I was home by the time the street lights came on. They nurtured me to where I knew I had potential. And so I want to talk about the 3 phases as I look back on my life, my journey. How did I get from living in the projects, 6 different places, hand-me-down clothes, being homeless for a day? How did I come from that to being an entrepreneur, founder, CEO of Inspirationally Speaking, women's conferences, books, and everything else. Obviously, the credit goes to the creator. But the first phase was recognizing potential. We each have a seed in us. It may be deep down inside. Some may not realize that that seed is there. And it just needs to, the growth needs to be fostered. It needs to be nurtured. But that seed is potential. We each have the ability to do great and amazing things. Once you realize that you have potential, because God planted that seed in all of us, then you can go on to that next step, which is understanding your vision. But just to go back to that potential, it depends on, that environment. It's up to us adults. Like Jennifer Washington was saying, it's an environment, to where adults have to take that responsibility to bring your child up in a way to where they know that they are destined for great things. Recognizing that potential. Then you can understand your vision. I always tell people, I had Montel Williams, the talk show host, come to my high school. I was a freshman in school, and they gathered all of us in the auditorium. I sat in the back, and I'm like, just like any young-minded person, I don't want to listen to this. And I slumped down in my seat. But when Montel Williams spoke, and his motto was, "Mountain, move out of my way." When he said that, I sat up in my seat, because to a young African-American girl growing up in a poverty or a lack, that meant I didn't have to settle. Mountain, move out of my way. That meant low economical statuses, social statuses, of education, or just what have you. Whatever obstacle was in my way. And like Elena was saying, it's that mentality. If I think that I don't have, then I won't have. So I took that as, I don't have to settle. I don't have to be here if I don't want to. So I started coming up with goals. What is it I'm good at? What is it that I like? And so I took the path of going into the military. I knew that if I didn't leave my small town, that I would fall into the rut of a bunch of children, at a young age, on alcohol, drugs, maybe turned out and prostituted, just a whole gamut of things. I knew that my best opportunity of making something of myself was to leave. Because in your hometown, everybody knows your weaknesses. Everybody is in that small mindset. In the military, my best opportunity was to see the world, to gain financial independence, emotional, mental, away from my parents, that I could take care of myself. And then through my journey, I realized that I was gifted in certain things, and I honed that skill. So that was step 2, understanding my vision. Step 3 is, I want to be my own boss. I knew I was going to do 20 years in the service, but after that, I want to be my own boss, tell myself what to do, wake up when I wanted to, set my own schedule. And that was through sweat equity. That's phase 3, where you plan, prepare, and you execute. So I'm telling you 3 different phases of how do you break out of the poverty mindset, that mentality. Sweat equity, that means that the pie is big enough for everybody to eat off of. If there's over 7 billion people in this world, and everybody talks about what it is they want to do, how they want to excel in certain things. I want to own my own clothing line, or I want to open up my own cupcake shop, or I want to be a motivational speaker, I want to be an athlete. We all have these great ideas, But only 25% of us are willing to act and achieve putting those ideas from thought to action. You have to plan, prepare, and execute. In order to get out of that poverty mindset, you have to put action into it. You just can't sit on the couch and just dream it. It takes more than that. You can't expect money to fall from the sky and all your problems to be solved. If you're lucky and you're one of those $1 million lottery ticket winners, hey, good on you. But guess what? If you're not educated to know, I need to set some money aside, I need to get a lawyer, I need to invest, that $1 million will be gone quick, fast, in a hurry. Because you will find out you got family members and friends coming out of the woodwork. So money may solve a lot of problems, but you have to be educated and down to earth to know what to do with that money, how to make it work. So again, it's recognize your potential, understand your vision, put in that sweat equity. And that's living also in your purpose. When you realize those three things, you're living in your purpose. You're living in abundance. I know when I spoke at Inglewood Community School in California, and I was talking to some of the students and the educators. And Inglewood, Compton, all that, they are riddled with the gang violence of the Crips and the Bloods. And it broke my heart to know, here you have students, they're at the bus stop, you know, with their parent, and you have gang members who would beat them up, shoot at them, try and discourage or put that fear in them because they thought that them getting an education meant that they were better than those gang members. See, those gang members were living in a poverty mentality that all it was about territory, guns, violence, drugs, alcohol, prostitution. You stay in that mentality, everything is going to be safe. As soon as you try and step on a school bus or try and get educated, now you think you're better than me. I'm going to squash that. And that's sad. That's intimidation by our own people. That's self-genocide. We fall into the trap of those that want to make us extinct or do away with us from the get-go. So I wrap this up, and I want people to know that when you live in a poverty mindset, just think back to our ancestors, those that fought for women's rights, those that fought for civil rights, those that were chained to the bottom of a ship sailing across the seas here to America. And it doesn't have to necessarily be African Americans. It could be your Italian immigrants, your Irish, Jewish. Everybody has ancestors that came here. They worked hard because they wanted to provide a better life. And in that, they sacrificed blood, sweat, and tears to do so that they could pave that golden path for those that were going to come after them, their children and their children's children. So when we have that poverty mentality, we're spitting on our ancestors. We're basically saying all the sacrifices that you made for us was for naught, was in vain. Water hoses, sprayed down with water hoses. Yeah, I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I'm just going to chill and let life pass me by. Those dogs that were sick and bit you till you were bloody. Yeah, so sorry that you went through all that, but I'm just going to continue to have children after child and stay in the projects and have the mentality that I can't do any better. Oh, voting? Nope. I'm not interested. My vote doesn't count. So all those things that our ancestors held dear and fought for, marched for, we're spitting in their face. I also want to say that leaving poverty does not mean we're not loyal and that we forget where we come from. It just means that you want better for yourself, that you have dreams, aspirations, that you want to be comfortable, that you want to leave your mark on this world and make a difference. And when you get to where you're going, when you don't forget where you come from, that's humility. You remain humble. You remain, and it becomes an honor. You still talk to those that maybe you left behind. Or if anything, when you get up that ladder, you look back with an extended hand and you pull the next person up. Maybe there's a job that they can get their foot in the door with. You can be a referral. Or just by example, by leading by example, you help them step up their game. Because, oh, well, Kimberly Collins, she came from where I was. Look at her now. Or Jennifer Foxworthy, look at where she's come from. Or Jennifer Washington or Elena. All of us ladies, we came from humble beginnings. But look at us now. We did not stop because we recognized our potential, we understood our vision, and we put in the sweat equity. We planned, prepared, and we executed.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
So we don't take anything for granted. So it doesn't mean that, like I said, that you're not being loyal. It just means that you're on the come up and you're willing to take other people with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we don't achieve or reach our full potential that God desires for us, we fall into the trap of the devil, of being bitter, lazy, we gossip. Overall, we become weak-willed women or men. And that just gives a playground for the devil to just hang out in because we're not being productive. So that's what I want to basically say. And if you don't think that you have it within you, think of Tyler Perry. He lived in his car. He was homeless. Maybe even Steve Harvey. There's several celebrities out there that struggled, but they didn't give up. They had a dream and they kept honing it, kept going after it, and look at them now. That's what keeps me going. That if Tyler Perry can go from living in his car to where he's at now, I know I can do it as well. Thank you, Kim.
Great points, great points. Elena, I know you have a story to share.
I can relate to, we've talked about these things before, and we can all relate to having that impoverished experience. I too grew up I was born in the projects of New York City, and my early years I grew up in New York City until until my family moved to Puerto Rico, and the situation really wasn't a whole lot better there. But I think it's so important to recognize for myself and for my entire family, I experienced it all around me. I'm blessed to have been one of the youngest in my family because I was able to, at a very young age, sit back and observe everyone in my household, observe the dynamics, observe my brothers and sisters and my parents, and it allowed me to see in the adults around me and in those older siblings behaviors that were being repeated from one to the other. It allowed me to identify what wasn't working and what was working. And so for myself, being the youngest and being able to observe those things, I was able to identify what for me perhaps would work or would not work. I didn't have to make the same mistakes that my older siblings made. And the wonderful part about having older siblings was when I moved to Puerto Rico, my older siblings stayed behind in New York because they were older already, they were of age. And as they began their families and as they began their lives, they would send for me at Christmas time, during summertime. And so I was blessed to be exposed to a different experience through my relatives, through my loved ones, through my siblings. So I was exposed to a whole lot more than they were at their young ages. I want to say that one of the biggest things that changed my life was when I really started to develop my spiritual understanding and my understanding of spiritual laws. I came to realize that, you know, we all as human beings are going to struggle. There is no human being on this world that is not going to experience some challenge, some difficulty. We all have to be able to see through and beyond that and make choices. We all have the ability to choose. And so for me, the really big turning point in my life came when I came to understand that I can't change the past. The past is done. Where I come from does not have to define who I am today. The only place Absolutely. And the only time that I can change things for the better for myself is in this present moment, right now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. It can't happen. I can be better tomorrow if I make the right choice today, right now, right. In this particular moment. And that is where we need to live. We need to start operating and functioning from this present moment. And again, I was exposed to a poverty mindset, in my early years and in my childhood, and it took a while to really break out of a lot of those behaviors that I inherited from my family, and it can happen at any moment that really you don't realize that you just did something that is going to just really limit your own personal growth. I want to share with you guys something that I think is really interesting. It's science, and you can check out Dr. Bruce Lipton. I follow him because I love his work. I think he's easy to understand, and it's easy. Some things can be really complex. You got to dumb it down for me when it comes to to certain types of sciences. But when he talks about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, he says the subconscious mind is running 95% of your decisions. So we operate in autopilot most of the time. We're not really thinking. When we hop in our car, all we know is that if I get in the car in the morning, all I know is that I need to get to work. I don't really think about that I have to start up the car, put my foot on the brake, put it in gear. Those things happen on autopilot. So what I was sharing with you guys earlier about how our subconscious mind, our subconscious habits, our subconscious decision-making all developed during the first 7 years of our lives when we weren't making any decisions. And so our conscious mind is the mind that is present right here, right now, in this moment. And that is only fully functioning at only 5%. 95% of our decisions and of the time is that everything is happening based on our subconscious mind. So you have to be consciously aware when you have the opportunity to make a decision for yourself, for your children, for your future. The only place you can make it is right now, and you have to be conscious when you have opportunities that come before you. You have to be mindful of yourself. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention to what your mind is saying to you. Pay attention to your spirit. Pay attention to your gut, because sometimes you'll feel that impulse to move forward, but at the same time you have this contradicting impulse to say, no, hold back, hold back. Listen to yourself. What's going on? Pay attention. Look around. I know that I recently started up a new business with my brother, and he's a licensed electrician. I shared this with you ladies not too long ago. And a few years back, he had started up the business elsewhere. And at the time, I remember him coming to me and sharing with me how he wanted for me to go into partnership with him, and there were just some things going on at the time in my personal life that I did not feel confident in my ability to engage as a partner in this business and help push it forward. When he came to me this time around, my original thought that popped into my head was, here we go again. We talked about this once before, and it's just not a good idea. But then I had to really stop and say, hold on a minute. Stop and think about this and really take a look at it. Let's look at the opportunity as it exists now, not as it existed back then and not based on the decision that I made back then. How does it look now? What's the vision now? What assets and what skills and strengths do we bring to the table now? And are the conditions different this time around that we could perhaps bring about great change and great business with this? And when I stopped to think about it like that and realize that it was just that fear popping into my head that was saying, no, you can't do this, you won't succeed, you're going to fail. When I realized that that's what was going on, all of a sudden my spirit opened up and my gut instinct said yes. And we shook hands on it. And I tell you, things are just, that mountain moved out the way. All of a sudden, what seemed like was not a good idea, all of a sudden, as soon as I opened up and looked at the conditions as they were right now in this moment, I realized the gold mine of an opportunity that was available to me and to him. And if I had if I had not paid attention to what was really going on in my subconscious, I would have passed up on the opportunity, and things wouldn't be going as well as they are right now. So again, I just want to put it out there to everyone that, you know, we have to be mindful that the only time, you know, that we can bring about change for ourselves is in this present moment. Not 5 years ago. Quit focusing on the past, because what happens is if you had a past failure and you start looking back at that past failure, you're going to wind up having the same experience and the same reaction to it, because you're looking at it through that lens. You're looking back and you're going to relive it all over again. The fears of everything that you experienced in that moment, in that failure, are going to rise up within you once again. And that could potentially hold you back if you don't recognize it for what it is. Fear. Push it aside and continue moving forward towards your goals. I have a couple of points.
Great point, Elena. That was awesome. Yes, I think you covered the main thing, the fear part. To say that your mind went back to the fear, a lot of people do that. Well, especially, you know, if you are actually focused on what your decision was in the past. If you're focused on that and you're not in the present moment, that fear will come in there quite easily. And Jennifer Washington, before we close out, I know you had something else you wanted to say, so I want to pass it over to you.
I just want to focus on, just to leave some nuggets behind just of what we were talking about and just how it has impressed upon me. And that is the programming, the speaking. Words are very powerful. And thoughts are very powerful. Fear is something, again, I just want to stress, when we make decisions out of fear, just like Elena just beautifully summarized a decision made out of fear to not proceed in business with her brother, but had she revisited fear again and made a decision based in that fear, she would miss out on amazing opportunities. So I believe that's what we do in many areas. And abundance and prosperity are not just material things. And I also, you know, I just wanted to share this as we close out, is that I have a friend who, she was going through a struggle, but she had to like downscale from a really posh and palatial home to like a one-bedroom apartment. Well, she would go to the dollar store and she would decorate this apartment, and you would come over and like, it was so beautiful, and she would say, I did it out of the dollar store, and I couldn't believe her. But she had this abundant mentality that whatever situation she was in, she would make it just as palatial. So, and you know, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought about her as you ladies were talking, and just how I felt when I would come into her one-bedroom apartment. It would feel like I came into a castle. And she would also have this gift of hospitality. She would get everything, you know, like just laid out. She would go to what we have, like this little farmer's market all around in Philadelphia. She would get this produce and all kinds of things on the cheap. but you wouldn't know it. You just wouldn't know the way she laid things out. She took pride in it, and it was something that permeated her life. So I just want to share that, you know, you may not be able to put out, you know, golden goblets and things like that, but if you give out of the prosperity of your heart and your intentions are of abundance and of hospitality, you will be more blessed, I believe, than anybody on this earth could be. So that's something that, you know, I just want to share, is giving even out of what we may perceive as our lack. You can still give so much of yourself to people. So that's, I just want to share that, you know, just the whole giving and not clenching up and saying, I can't give it because I don't have it. Well, that's why you don't have it, you know?
You're right.
Yeah. So that's it.
That's right. That's a great point, Jennifer. That is wonderful, because, you know, I grew up like Jennifer Foxworthy was saying. I grew up in the projects too, and I didn't know we were poor until we went to the grocery store and I seen my mom pull out that book of food stamps. That is when it kind of smacked me in the face, because when we were in the house, you know, everything was loving. My mom made sure we ate. We made sure we didn't have the best clothes, like Jennifer probably said. We might have had hand-me-downs, but we had clothes. And it wasn't until I went out and was around other people that I realized that, wait, something's missing. We are lacking, you know, financially, but we were rich in so many other things. And it taught me to celebrate the things that I do have, be appreciative and acknowledge the things that I do have, stop concentrating on the things that I don't have. And as I grew older, now that I'm an adult, I can look at the things that we have now and say, wow, God has really brought me from a mighty long way. You know, I've heard the term, you know, going from the projects to the pit house, you know, and that's where God, if that's where God is moving me, then that's where he's moving me, because I'm no longer in the project. So I no longer have to have that poverty mentality. I no longer have to live in fear. I no longer have to live in just limits, because, you know, I've taken the limits off. He's shown me, you know, the limitless possibilities out there, and I'm so grateful for that. Every day that we get on this hangout, I am grateful that he's connected me with you three ladies, and we are together empowering each other to get to our next level. And I am so appreciative to WBND Radio for giving us this opportunity collectively to go to the next level. So those of you out there, I encourage you to go to each one of our links, our Facebook pages, our website, wherever you can contact us at. My personal Facebook fan page is www.facebook.com/Kimberly Collins, The Educated Natural. I will leave everyone else's Facebook pages and links below in the comment section about below this video, so that you guys can connect with us, empower us, and we'll empower you. We do this for you because we know that there are limitless possibilities out there for you. Do not put limitations on yourself. The world is your oyster, as they say. Reach for the stars. You know, and in case you don't make it, at least you'll be above the clouds. You know, I'll tell people every day that I am above the grass and below the clouds. I have an opportunity to get better, to do the things of this world that are available out there for me. And I encourage you to do the same thing. When you shake the stronghold of the poverty mentality, you open up the door to success. Each one of us can attest to that. When we cleared our minds of every limitation and walked into our purpose, the door of success opened up for each one of us. So look at us as your beaming light. Okay, in a very dark room. If you're in a dark room, let us be your light. We are here to guide you to your next level. We thank each and every one of you for joining us week after week. We thank you. If you have any questions, leave them below this video. Contact us on our individual social media pages, and we will definitely get back with you. Thank you, ladies, for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Y'all have a blessed evening, everyone. And as we always say as we close our videos, we hope that you enjoy your journey. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Kimberly. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.